Hello everyone, welcome to another Supplemental. This is my more loosely scripted series, something halfway between a podcast and a vlog, and today I have a very special guest, Daniel from Spacedock.
Hello!
So, we are going to talk about the best Star Trek movie you've never seen. It's not Galaxy Quest, because everyone's seen Galaxy Quest. We're going to be talking about Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, which I think is like your favourite movie, isn't it?
It competes with Treasure Planet as my favorite movie of all time. I love Master and Commander. It's fantastic.
It's a brilliant film, yeah. So for those who may not know, Star Trek is massively influenced by sort of literature, which is like naval adventure literature. Both Gene Roddenberry and Nicholas Meyer pulled from C.S. Forester's Horatio Hornblower series of novels when kind of crafting their kind of take on Star Trek. And I believe there is a Horatio Hornblower TV show adaptation, isn't there? Which I think you've seen.
Yeah, there's a series of TV movies with that guy whose name I can't remember, who was Mr. Fantastic.
Iowin Gruffafoot or something, whatever his name is.
Yeah, I always mix him up with the guy who played Ramsay Bolton. He's called like Ian Ryan or something, because they've both got eyes in their name. But yeah, he was good. They're good. They're really good films, though. So it's a shame they were cancelled like 3 seasons in, because they were getting really good, and they would have got to Trafalgar, and we would have had all the really interesting historical stuff, but it never quite got there.
That is a shame, yeah. So, Master and Commander: Far Side of the World is based on a separate series of novels, and basically the story of this is that we follow the HMS Surprise, captained by Captain Aubrey, played by Russell Crowe, and he's out in the Pacific Ocean, sort of looking for privateers which are being employed by the French, who are kind of raiding British shipping and so on and so forth, and they come up against the Acheron, which is like this state-of-the-art, super heavy frigate, which is, got twice their guns, twice their numbers, super thick hull, and basically they are completely outmatched, and basically they get the shit kicked out of them in the opening sequence, and the rest of the film is this really cool battle of wits between the Acheron and the Surprise, as Aubrey kind of goes after it and tries to hunt it down and stop it. And you can really see kind of the Enterprise versus Reliant / Balance of Terror kind of thing going on here.
Especially the Nicholas Meyer thing. It's very Wrath of Khan. Like, there's a lot of that Captain Ahab kind of like he's obsessed with chasing down the Acheron in much the same way that Kirk was with Khan, and they kind of echoed it in First Contact as well. Star Trek loves a good Moby Dick allegory.
They do, don't they? Yeah. I think one of the best relationships in the film is between Aubrey and Maturin, the captain and the ship's doctor, which is kind of reminiscent of the Kirk-Spock relationship, but also the Kirk-McCoy relationship, in that Maturin is sort of the nerd of the crew and very science-obsessed, but at the same time he's also kind of Aubrey's conscience, in a way.
It's very emotion versus reason, which is another dichotomy that Star Trek does a lot with Data and all that. There's always that kind of dynamic between at least two people in a Star Trek crew. They seem to emulate that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's, at least for me, I think it's what some of Crowe and Paul Bettany's best performances, as far as I'm concerned. I think they're terrific in this film. They're absolutely brilliant. They've got really great chemistry as well.
I love the whole, like, all the way through the film, Maturin just wants to do his nature stuff, and it's like he's constantly hamstrung by being on this military ship, and he's desperately wants to just go for a walk and collect beetles, and the world is stacked against him. And it's such a sympathetic, like, fun character arc, and there's loads of lovely little moments, like when the young midshipman gives him a Galapagos beetle that he found as like a compromise after he wasn't allowed to go to the Galapagos Islands. And it's just like it's these like simple, heartwarming goal that he's got, and it's like it puts you on his side quite a lot. And you can see, I always love it when because there's far too often in fiction is like drama for drama's sake, where nobody at least one person will have like a completely unrelatable motivation, and it's just like a fight. And like it's nice to see two people like who are emotionally and logically opposed, but they have like sensible reasons for it, and you kind of on both of their sides.
I really love Maturin's sort of the passion for science that he has in the movie, because there's a fantastic sequence where like minor spoilers I guess, but when he eventually does get to the Galapagos Island, and it's a really great sequence where it's just him examining all the wildlife and like collecting little samples and things. It's a really, really good little sequence, and that again kind of harkens back to Star Trek's kind of strange new worlds and strange new life kind of thing, because we literally kind of get that in the film, and it's ironically enough not something that a lot of the Star Trek movies manage to fit in, but Master and Commander still manages to do that, which I think is really cool.
I think as well as like the actual moments where it's overtly focused on him doing his nature stuff, I also love how it's like comedically woven into things all the time. Like there's the bit where they're doing the gun practice, and for a couple of seconds it cuts away to him in his little cabin with like handkerchiefs in his ears, and he's just like dissecting a fish or something, and he's just trying to get on with his work. It's good fun. It's just like a really simple and endearing dynamic for the two main characters to have.
There's loads of little moments like that with the crew. There's always like these fun little, really charming little sequences and little bits which really endear you to this ship and this crew and these people.
I think one of the things that Star Trek takes the most from Age of Sail literature, and what other things have since taken from Star Trek, is the sort of romanticized one ship, one community kind of feel. Like essentially a ship is like a tool that turns cooperation into freedom, if you know what I mean. Like it's the whole thing is built on community and all being stuck together and just having to like be the parts of the machine kind of thing. That kind of romanticized tone is as I'm glad that it's spread so far across science fiction, because it's a wonderful theme to have throughout the genre.
I think the movie does a really good job where it's like this really cool kind of high seas adventure, but at the same time it's got a bit of grit to it, and it's kind of it finds the romance in this setting, which, you know, in the hands of one director could be very gritty and very dark and very bleak, but sort of, even though it doesn't shy away from kind of the more gruesome elements of this life and this kind of period of history, it still manages to feel kind of larger than life and like a real adventure.
It's not like gritty for its own sake. It's not so romanticized as to be an unrealistic depiction of the Age of Sail. Like it still has all of the gruesome surgery and the violent boarding actions, and then when it actually does get intense at the end, it's like cut together in a very kind of violent and fast-paced way that communicates that very well. But it's like it'll still take the time to just like play Boccherini and have a long beauty shot of the ship sailing away, and it keeps that kind of feel to it the whole time.
I remember someone used the phrase in Star Trek, starship porn is when you have those big sweeping camera shots where they're just like, look at the ship, and it's just that's
8 minutes of it in motion picture.
Yeah. And that scene in Lower Decks as well, where it just like,
that was funny. I really enjoyed that they riffed on that. It was great.
Yeah, I love that scene. But
ironically, that will almost certainly come in handy for a Spacedock video one day. It's come full circle.
Absolutely, yeah. But the film in general as well is like just an incredibly well crafted film. It's a really well directed film, really like beautifully shot film. And if you're a history buff, like, this is, you know, your movie, because it's just so authentic and painstakingly reproduces this period and this way of life and the ships as well, and it has this really great blend of practical and CGI as well.
I'd say as well that this film and also the Hornblower movies are a very good entry point for learning about the Age of Sail and the Napoleonic Wars and that kind of thing, if you're interested, because it's it doesn't shy away from like, it doesn't hold your hand too much. Like, it still rolls out all of the Jack speak and the language and the terminology and everything, and it doesn't like guide you through it all. It doesn't have people explaining things to each other when they would already know all of those things, but it's still accessible enough to be like, to leave you curious about these things and make you read more. Like, it's just, I think, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people have got into that period of history and read a lot more about the past just from this film.
Absolutely, yeah. And there are small select moments where Maturin is very much on the outside of kind of the Navy lads, and he often misses things which are then like explained to him. But as you say, it's not like there's not huge dumps of exposition where someone explains this is what the sail does and this is what the cannon does and things, and it's just kind of just very well told visually, and you get it, and it, as you say, it makes you want to learn more. And
it's very organic.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think Maturin is an audience viewpoint character done well, I would say.
Absolutely. And I think because we've both seen the History Buffs video on this film, haven't we?
Yeah, great video.
Yeah, so we know all about Thomas Cochrane, who Aubrey is very much based on. Who is? Oh right, I forgot that was in the History Buffs video. That's I've read most of this guy's autobiography. So this is the So Jack Aubrey's based on Thomas Cochrane,
who was, I've put in my notes here, was basically the Chuck Norris of the Napoleonic Wars.
He's one of those people where you're like, if you hear about the stuff he's done, you're like, nah, surely, like, it's one of those things where, like, if this was in a movie, you'd say, nah, that's unrealistic, you know, but...
Yeah, it's the stranger than real kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, just pulled off completely insane stuff. But this was the same, and to bring it back to Kirk, Cochrane was a lot like Kirk, to bring back to Star Trek, rather, he was a lot like Kirk, in that he was like, not the Admiralty was not much of a fan of him, and he was like reckless and insubordinate and surefire. And it's interesting because I think Gene Roddenberry said that Patrick Stewart's Picard was supposed to be based on Hornblower, but I never quite bought that. But I guess Picard is more like Hornblower and Kirk is more like Aubrey. Picard's more reserved and introverted and all that, whereas Aubrey and Cochrane, who he's based on, it was just like a complete revolutionary. And despite the fact that he would constantly be given like more and more rubbish ships as punishment for stuff that he'd done, he would still continually like win against massive odds and destroy Spanish galleons on his own and stuff. So it's like, a completely insane story, this guy. And it's if you can get his autobiography on Amazon if anyone wants to read that. And there's also a whole load of great videos about the guy. The History Buffs one for Master and Commander, and of course Kings and Generals is a great channel. They have a series on Thomas Cochrane. It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah. They do great stuff, yeah. Also, that's also a point there. The battle sequences in this film in general, as you say, are really well done, but they manage to, like, it's like every time these ships sort of fire a broadside of cannons, it's like you've been punched, you know? It has like a real kind of oomph to it, and the sequences are really kind of frenetic and quite violent and sort of kind of shocking in a way, where like a lot of the movies, these kind of, you know, as you say, romanticized camera shots and things of these ships, so when they finally kind of go to heads with each other, it's really, really impactful, but at the same time, it's never confusing, you know. It finds that sweet spot of kind of, you know, quick cuts and handheld camera and so on, but it never becomes confusing or disorienting, and you're always kind of aware of the strategy that both ships are using and the tactics both crews are using. So that's really good.
The sound design is so good in this film. Like, there's the bit at the beginning where they're ambushed in the fog at night, and you see the flash of the cannons like a second before the sound happens, because it's like because of the distance. And then it's grape shot, and you immediately see it like cut horizontally through all of the wooden deck. So like all the sort of whole rack that the ship's bell is in, and like anything that stands more than a foot above the deck is like cut down. And the sound effects are just like this massive gut punch to it, and it's shocking because it comes straight out of this peaceful, no music kind of foggy ambience, and then you're suddenly hit with this, and it really does put you in the place of what it would be like to be, you know, standing on a few floating planks and having cannonballs blasted at you.
It's interesting to know because as you've got here in the notes as well, that originally in the book that this is based on, the bad guys were actually Americans. That this was in the War of 1812, and apparently the American studios didn't like that they were the bad guys in the novel. Yeah,
it was apparently the director was told that the Americans wouldn't go and see this movie if they were the villains, so it had to be changed. And I think it had to be changed quite late in the game, because the change they've made, like, it's a good patch job, but it doesn't really make sense historically, because they're fighting French privateers. And they still mention that the Acheron was Yankee built, which doesn't make sense. Like, it was built in Boston, but it's being used by French privateers, and also apparently privateers, which are basically civilian independent ship crew. Like, they're not even French military, but they've got like the most advanced super duper frigate in the world. So like, how did this happen? Like, it's just not really explained why they've got this. And you know, I will say though, it's nice that it kind of this change does get to show off like what privateers are a little bit, and it's also because when they turn up at the end, the French are wearing uniforms, and that was a thing that that privateers were allowed to do, but most of them didn't. But like they were allowed to wear naval uniforms of the nation that had given them a letter of marque. And most of the time when someone did that, it meant they were like dodgy privateers who just wanted to use it to intimidate traders and things and pretend to be the military, basically. So it's and you do get the impression that they're kind of like wily, the crew of the Acheron, because he's got the whole he swaps places with the ship's doctor and like tries to escape capture and stuff. Yeah,
I love that moment at the end where, again, this is kind of spoilers territory. If you have, go watch the movie if you haven't watched it already.
Yeah, you should have gone and seen it by now. Come back when you've seen it.
But like that bit at the end when he realizes that the captain's basically giving him the slip is like so brilliant because it's just the perfect way to end the film.
The author of the Aubrey Maturin books always left them on open endings, so that was kind of a tribute to that. But it's like, it is I think it's my favorite ending ever. Like, I love the ending of that film. It's so perfect because like so much just coalesces at once that they sail off and it's got this romantic vibe and they beat to quarters and it's playing the Boccherini string quintet and you see all the crew running to their stations and they're just playing the duet in the cabin as they go and pursue. And it's also Maturin still doesn't get to go to the Galapagos Islands. Like he gets turned around and he just throws his map on the table. He's like, "Fine, I give up." It's like you just feel for the guy. It's funny. It's great. Like it's just all of the like tones and themes of the film just come together at once, and it's just a beautiful ending.
The Aubrey and Maturin relationship, as much as I compare it to Kirk and Spock and Kirk and McCoy like earlier, it has its own real like great kind of charming dynamic and is really like the heart of the film, where you really get the sense that these guys are like the oldest and the best of friends, where like they kind of bounce off each other really well, and that Aubrey appreciates Maturin's science and things, but also Maturin kind of realizes that Aubrey has other priorities and kind of respects him as a ship's captain at the same time. And there's a really kind of great kind of push and pull in the movie where Maturin is always telling Aubrey, kind of as the voice of reason, that he's obsessed with his pursuit of the Acheron and all that kind of stuff. But Aubrey also hits back at him that he kind of only really wants to do his science. But there's a great moment in the film where basically Aubrey thinks that he's lost the Acheron and basically realizes that he's kind of putting his men through hell kind of for his own ego. So he turns the ship around and lets Maturin explore the Galapagos, which is really nice. And you get that sequence that I mentioned earlier where they're exploring the island and examining all the life forms and things. But then, as soon as Maturin actually spots the Acheron on the other side of the Galapagos Islands, he kind of says, "Yeah, you know what? I'll throw in the towel here. I'll abandon kind of these samples and tell Aubrey, what's up, so they can go after the ship at the end." And it's a really great dynamic between the two of like respecting each other but also kind of calling each other out on their bullshit, but also self-sacrificing for each other as well. It's a really great dynamic between the two.
They both end up having to give up what they want for the other person at some point. Like it's also another element of their relationship is it's used as a kind of classical liberal conservative kind of argument. Like there's a bit where and it's done in a very respected, kind of mutually respectful way, where Aubrey is kind of defending the military discipline structure of the ship and how it's necessary, and he's kind of explaining like that he sees the whole world like this, like he's kind of trapped in this military mindset where he's like everyone must be governed and disciplined and organized, otherwise we'll have anarchy. And Maturin's got some excellent retorts where he's Aubrey's talking about the danger of mutiny, and Maturin says, "I'm rather understanding of mutinies after people have been trapped in a wooden prison for years." Like it's and it's like he's got a wonderfully civilian look, like outlook on it, and it's great to get both of those viewpoints because the audience is likely going to gravitate towards Maturin's viewpoint, but at the same time, it's like, would this really work if they tried to run it the way he's talking about? Like the way this is happening, it kind of needs that level of hardline discipline. And like sometimes that's necessary, and he's talking about hierarchies in nature, and it's just a wonderful dynamic that like it's not like a tantrum or a fight. They both really respect each other's opinions, and it's just a debate. It's really well done.
Have you read the books that this is based on?
I have not. I've been meaning to for a long time. I've read the first couple of Hornblower books, but I'm intending to get to the Aubrey Maturin books as soon as I can. Really.
Yeah. I wonder if they're on Audible or something, or any other.
I think they are.
I might have a look.
I know that the this film is named after the first book, but it's an adaptation of the events of like the seventh book or something. Like it's just sort of takes bits from different places and kind of builds the general vibe of the series rather than directly adapting it.
Like I've heard in the books, there's like a whole plot line of like it shows Aubrey and Maturin first meeting, and like Maturin apparently did some like spy work for the British government at some point or something. So like the books are probably really worth a read to kind of get even more into these characters in this world, and so I'm sure they're very good as well.
You can really see how the content of these books has like bounced through science fiction, because I think the Hornblower books had a bit of espionage stuff as well, and then they wound up in these books, and there's a bit of espionage stuff, And then there's the Honor Harrington books, which are just sci-fi hornblower, which are David Waber's books. They're pretty good, and they also like arbitrarily include spying and stuff because everyone's just sort of like riffing on the previous thing. But it's great. It's like, you know, there's nothing new under the sun. It's all about reincorporation.
That's how good artwork happens, yeah. Because in TNG and things, you get everyone dressed up in their weird ninja suits and going off on missions to some anonymous cave to infiltrate Cardassian things or whatever. But
yeah.
Where do they get those like suits from? I don't know why.
I just don't know. Lower Decks took the mick out of that as well, which was fun. Yeah,
it's a really good one. Yeah, but so yeah, that's a Master and Combat. Do you have anything else to talk about that you want to get to in the film?
Go and watch it. You should have gone and watched it before we spoiled it all, but go and watch it. It's genuinely amazing film. It's so good, and it really, really should have got a sequel. There's some rumors that it might still get a sequel. I know that Russell Crowe has advocated for it a lot, but I think the original film came out at like the same time as The Two Towers or something, and got thoroughly annihilated in the box office.
I think it's one of those films where I think it's because it's like it cost like $150 million and it was R-rated. I think so. Studios weren't really sure what to do with it, and so I think that's maybe why it didn't do so well. But yeah, it absolutely deserves more films. But if you can track down, I recently got it on a very nice 4K Blu-ray, so I'd highly recommend that version because it's got great bonus features as well. But yeah, if you can track it down, it's absolutely worth watching. If you're a Star Trek fan, or if you're a history buff, or just a fan of good movies, you know. And you should probably watch the Hornblower TV show as well.
Yeah, I'd say so. They're really, really good films. Those really good.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that as well when I've watched it.
Yeah, you should get on that. They're great.
I will. Yeah, but so for now, this has been Daniel. You should probably check out The Sojourn. Another plug for you?
Yeah, the Sojourn is very much built around an Age of Sail vibe like this. So if this is your kind of jam, you definitely check it out.
Absolutely, there you go. So until next time, have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.